Part 222. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 2215. In addition to selling all kinds of small items, many people came out with fabrics, and there was a piece of oilcloth on the ground, on which was placed a string of very brightly colored fabrics. There are all kinds of strange patterns on it. Man Bao couldn't help but look at it. Bai Shan simply took her hand and looked forward. The street vendor excitedly opened a piece of cloth to show them the pattern. Do you think the color of this cloth is particularly correct? This pattern is also carefully traced by us, and it is a good material. Man Bao reached out and touched it. The color was beautiful and the pattern was gorgeous, but the material was a bit thick, and it couldn't even match the fine texture, let alone compared to silk and satin. Wearing this kind of fabric on such a hot day is actually a bit airtight. Bai Shan also felt that the material was average, but it was okay to wear it for pleasure, so he asked the price. The vendor had just witnessed the passing of the stone they asked for a price, so he thought about it and said, "A tael of silver." Bai Shan, do they just look like stupid people with a lot of money? He glanced at the other party, thought about the price of the second-class fine cotton, and said, 300 yuan apiece, do you sell it? The vendor opened his mouth and saw that both of them were staring at him with round eyes. He suspected that if he raised the price again, the other party might walk away as ruthlessly as he did to the vendor just now, so he hesitated and nodded, sell. So Bai Shan bought a piece of cloth for $300. When the vendors on the side saw that they had made a deal, they began to sell them even more enthusiastically. Many people put out the melons and fruits that could not be eaten at home, but it was a pity that Man Bao and the others had eaten them this afternoon. The melons were cold and hurt the stomach, so Man Bao told them not to eat too much. Therefore, everyone's eyes lingered on those melons and fruits, but they didn't say anything about buying them. They just asked the price and decided to check the price tomorrow. The group of people withdrew their hands regretfully, then turned back and whispered, "Didn't you say that no one buys the melons and fruits here? Why are they more expensive than our capital?" Man Bao said, "Tomorrow I will look everywhere. Maybe there are cheap ones somewhere, but it's really good here. There is a stall at the door. It's very convenient." Bai Shan didn't know that these stalls were temporarily set up for them, and nodded, looking at the town. It's quite prosperous, and even if there are fewer guests outside, they themselves are very lively. The street vendors saw them go into the house just like that, and their hearts were filled. Fortunately, the soldiers who came with them also ran out to join in the fun after eating dinner and taking a bath. Although there were not many purchases, there were also transactions. The most important thing is popularity. Since April this year, no merchants who should come have come, and the town has been silent for 2 months. Originally, this time of year was the busiest time for the town. Whether it was businessmen from the Central Plains going to the western regions, or businessmen from the western regions going to the Central Plains, most of them had to pass through here, otherwise their town would not have been built so well. Generally speaking, from June to September is the peak period for visitors to their town. These 4 months make more money than they earn from grazing and planting in 1 year. Bai Shan and the others didn't know this at first, but after a few more days, they will know. Nai Kenjun restrained his subordinates, allowing them to play in the small town or go hunting on horseback, but they were not allowed to conflict with the local residents. So at first, the soldiers didn't dare to go far. After getting up every day, they practiced in the yard before going to sleep. They have been on the road all this time, and they went up the mountain to kill horse thieves a few days ago. It is impossible to say that they are not tired. It is the time when they are short of sleep, so they hid in the room and slept in the first 2 days. Man Bao and the others were just the opposite. Early in the morning light shone into the house through the window, and Man Bao opened her eyes in the sunshine. Then she blinked, and when she woke up, she jumped up from the bed happily. She slept well and her body relaxed, She stretched her waist hard, turned around and pushed open the window to take a look out first. I saw that the outside was already lively, and there were not many people selling, but there were many people busy by the lake. Some were washing clothes by the lake, and some were washing vegetables and rice, but they were divided into places. Manbao leaned her chin against the windowsill and looked out. It was a large lake, and a dense forest followed the lake. If she hadn't looked far and saw the yellow desert on both sides, she almost thought it was in the middle of nowhere. A place with abundant water resources like Yazhu. Zhou Liru, who was separated by a screen from her, seemed to be awakened by her. She yawned and got up, and looked in from behind the screen. Seeing the ant's bright eyes, she shrank back, pulled the quilt up, covered herself all, and beat her. Yawned, "I'm not going anywhere today." Manbao was a little disappointed. "Okay, then I'll get up by myself." Like Zhou Liru, there are many people who choose to stay in bed the next day. The only one who can get up at this time is Mr. Zhuang, and only Bai Shan. When the three master and apprentice met in the yard, Mr. Zhuang nodded with satisfaction, and said to the two, "Don't worry about them, let's go out for breakfast." So the three master and apprentice went out with Daji and two guards. The guard who slept on the east and west sides took a look and continued to lie still. There were 4 carriages parked in the yard, 2 were empty blue cloth carriages, and the other 2 were loaded with a lot of luggage. Yesterday only the luggage that the masters used daily, such as those gold, silver, jewelry, and fabrics, are still in the box. It is estimated that they will be packed up in the afternoon and put in the room, so at this time, you have to be careful not to let people touch them. Put things in order. Bai Shan and the others went out, and after the guard closed the door, they looked at the master. Bai Shan and Manbao pointed, "Sir, we walked there yesterday. There are many shops, including restaurants. They had already eaten at the inn in Ale last night, and they plan to change their place to eat today." Mr. Zhuang took a look and turned around. "Let's go then, and look over there. In the morning, we mostly eat pancakes, and there are very few noodles, let alone porridge. However, there is a lot of goat milk here, a bowl of 1 penny, boiled, and a bowl of 3 cents with tea. Yes, goat milk is not expensive, but tea is expensive, which is the opposite of Central Plains." Bai Shan tried a bowl of goat milk without tea leaves, and after taking one last bite, put it aside and ordered goat milk with tea leaves again. The 3 masters and apprentices only had a mouthful of cake and a mouthful of milk, and they ate it with relish. The guards on the side have a good appetite. As long as they are on the road, they will not relax, especially after experiencing bandit suppression and treasure hunting a few days ago, and they are even more nervous. Now they relax, even the guards are a little lazy of. In the eyes of the residents of the town, these new guests are very friendly, and even the guards look silly, they look very deceived, but it is a pity that a few young masters and young ladies do not seem to be in charge of money, so they are very stingy. They won't buy things that are more expensive. And also very picky. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2216. The picky Manbao stood in front of the stall selling fish, and be sure to put the fish in another bucket, but the stall vendor was not happy, and insisted on recommending the remaining fish to Manbao. "This fish is delicious, it's especially delicious, it can be boiled in soup or steamed." Bai Shan glanced at him, put away the copper coins, and took out a silver horn. The vendor saw that his whole face was distorted, and he was very excited, but he extended his hand halfway and refused, turning his head to the side and saying, "Miss Young Master, don't make it difficult for us, this fish can't be sold to you, it's going to be sent to the old man's house. The eldest master is the mayor of this town." Manbao and the others heard from the young man yesterday that the town is not very stable, and occasionally horse thieves come to loot, but they are all blocked by their eldest master and his soldiers and horses, so at least half of the houses in this town belong to the eldest man. Bai Shan still has to pay, but Man Bao stopped him when he saw that he was embarrassed like this, and said with a smile, "Okay, we won't buy it today. If you catch another fish like this tomorrow, you can keep one for me." The vendor hesitated for a moment and then shook his head. This kind of fish is not easy to catch, and there are not many in the lake. If it catches, no matter how much it is, it will be sent to the master's house. Man Bao tilted his head, "He can eat so much." The street vendor laughed, "Miss is joking, our eldest master is not alone, there are parents, brothers, wives, and children, and a whole family. This is only a fish, and it is not enough to plug your teeth." Man Bao. What can she say? Bai Shan also put away the silver horn, turned his head and said to her, "Let's fish by ourselves." Man Bao nodded, "Okay." So they turned around and went back, but they still bought fish before going back. They may not have eaten fish for a long time, and the lake looks very good, and the fish produced should also be delicious. The two of them carried a few fishes in one hand, and brought nearly 10 fish back with 4 hands, leaving 2 and giving the rest to Nikanjun and the others. The cook was cooking a large pot of rice for the soldiers and guards in the yard next door. After thinking about it, Man Bao simply rolled up his sleeves and said, "Let's cook by ourselves." Bai Erlang, who had just slept and went downstairs, turned pale with shock, and even Mr. Zhuang stopped and couldn't help but turn his head. "Actually, it's not necessary." Bai Shan also stopped her, "These 2 fish are rare, I think it's better to leave it to the chef of the inn to make them, and then order some food from the inn. If you don't have enough money, why do you need to do it yourself?" The wronged hands do not say, but also wronged stomach. Several others nodded. Man Bao had no choice but to give up, "But I don't want to eat pancakes and steamed buns, I want to eat." Bai Shan breathed a sigh of relief and immediately said, "This is easy, we don't order the main food, we cook the rice ourselves. This is not difficult, Lu Huan and Yin may not know it, but everyone else can." Bai Shan rolled up his sleeves and went into the kitchen, and asked Man Bao to go to the luggage and get a small bag of rice out. Bai Erlang exhaled and immediately ran down, "I know where it is, I'll go." So the steward took the fish, turned around and went to the inn, and ordered a dish by the way. After he came back, Bai Shan had already set up the fire, and Man Bao had put the rice on the stove. He hurried forward, "Master, Miss Man, I'll do this kind of thing." Bai Shan waved his hand and said indifferently, "We'll just come, and..." He looked up and down, "Can you cook?" The manager froze, unable to speak. He really doesn't. He is the son of a family, surnamed Li, but his grandfather was Mrs. Liu's dowry. His grandfather was in charge at that time, managing the dowry for Mrs. Liu. After waiting for his father, after all, there is still the process of entering the manor to serve, and he will serve people more or less, but later his father also came out and became a steward, taking care of the zhuangzi and shops outside. So when it was his turn, Mrs. Liu was graceful. When he was 7 or 8 years old, he followed his father to run errands in the store, saying that he was a servant, but his life was not bad. Compared with the people outside, he was similar to the young master. Mrs. Liu deliberately transferred him from Longzhou, because he often went out to run the Bai family's business outside behind the head of Bai Daguan. What kind of food, cloth, wood, etc., he has traveled all over the world, and it is impossible for a big manager to leave a mess on his hands, so Mrs. Liu selected him carefully, thinking that he has a lot of wealth. The experience of going out is not bad in terms of human relationships and sophistication. He also understands the affairs of the Bai family and the Liu family. When going out, he knows nothing about the industries in the family. If he encounters the in-laws of Bai and Liu, he can mention the old clique. If Bai Shan needs to hire someone, it is more convenient for him to go out and hire someone. He is not too old, 3 out of 20, so he really knows how to make a fire and cook, and he has no experience at all, even worse than Bai Shan. To be honest, he still doesn't quite understand the old lady. Why didn't he put a servant next to the young master? As for Daji, although he has always followed the young master, everyone knows that he is not a servant, not even a long follower, but a confidant who only protects the safety of the young master. Daji has a servant waiting by his side. Although Duan Shui Huan and the laundry are all done by the servant, there is no servant who is close to the young master, and he has to get up at night if he wants to drink water. Didn't he see that Yin or Lu Huan had people with him? He found out when he went upstairs today that Chang Shao and Lu Huan had changed places last night, and lived in the same room with Yin or. The servant told him at night, and also in the morning. The servant waited close to him, and it was someone who spit out a spittoon. Unlike their young master, who has been living with the young master Tang, not to mention such trivial matters as pouring water, when you want to change clothes, you have to rummage through the box to find it by yourself. Sometimes he feels sad when he thinks about it. Seeing that they still had to make a fire to cook by themselves, Director Li was even more saddened. He opened his mouth, wanting to say that it doesn't matter, he can learn. Bai Shan has already waved his hand with a smile. We are cooking and playing in the kitchen, you go and find out what the bait here is, but there are if we don't sell it, if we don't dig somewhere, we'll go fishing in the afternoon. When Mr. Zhuang in the yard heard that he was going to go fishing, he immediately walked over and asked, where to go fishing. After thinking about it, Bai Shan said, it can't be done here, there are many pedestrians here, and there are many people washing things, I'm afraid the fish will be scared away, and they are very clever if they don't run away, I'm afraid they won't bite the bait, so let's go out, go up the lake and go to a less populated place. Mr. Zhuang nodded and pointed in one direction, there are dense forests and grass in that direction, the lake water flows out from there, and there are no houses there. I heard that there are many fields in this small town in that direction, so it should be possible to go there. After speaking, he said, I'll go with you. Maybe he hasn't fished for a long time, but he's still a little happy to think about it. Li Guanqi's many thoughts were crowded out by these things. He said, then we have to take a carriage. Young master, do you want to prepare some refreshments? Everyone nodded together, this is needed. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2217. The town is built on an oasis, but it does not mean that the oasis is only as big as a small town. The lake stretches away, and finally disappears into the desert. Along the way, there are also stretches of green trees and grass. This piece belongs to the oasis. Scope. The people in the small town dug out the arable land next to the oasis, and dug ditches to divert water. Some people even planted the melons and fruits on the gobe, and watered them occasionally, although the fruits were a little small. But still sweet. In the past, when there were many merchants passing by, they would buy it and take it away with good quality, and send it to another place for sale. The bad ones were that the merchants bought it to quench their thirst, and they also ate it themselves. But this year, few people came, and the good melons and fruits in the greenhouse could not be sold. Naturally, they didn't care about the melons and fruits in the gobe. Manbao and the others put the fishing tackle on the roof of the car, and after supporting Mr. Zhuang into the car, they ran to lead their horses out, and rode happily. Yin probably didn't want to ride a horse, so he shared a car with Mr. Zhuang. Under the protection of the guards, the group went out in a mighty way. In less than a quarter of an hour, everyone in the town knew that the new guest went out to fish yesterday. Just to catch a fish, there are more than 10 servants with him, but he is very proud. It's a pity that the teenagers have no money. I don't think the old gentleman who is in charge doesn't look like an extravagant person. Their business is not easy to do. They are officials, not businessmen, so naturally they won't spend too much money on these things. I think they are more generous than those merchants. Those merchants buy things that can be taken out. They buy a lot of things, but the prices are not high. Unlike them, all they buy is for food. Listen. It is said that there are 20 people washing clothes for them in a few yards today, and everyone in our town can make money, not to mention the vegetables and meat they bought today, if they live for 20 days. When everyone heard it, their spirits were lifted, and someone said, then there is a place for the melons and fruits in our greenhouse. One person can eat one a day, and they can eat more than 100 a day. Don't think about it, they think it's too expensive. Only a few people bought it yesterday. They're all soldiers. How much money can they have? There's not as much money as the guys brought by the businessmen. Should we be cheaper? Those melons and fruits will rot in the ground if they are not sold. Many people think about it. In fact, they are also willing. Since it is not a one-time business, it is okay to be cheaper. After hitting the horses out of the town, the manbayas who walked out along the lake did not know that they would usher in a price reduction when they came back. At this time, the horses were running out along the lake, and the grass was still lush. Not only did the horses run happily, but Manbao also felt very happy, which was much more comfortable than running on the Gobi Desert. One of the guards ran back and pointed to the front. Master, Miss Man, there is an open space in front of you. It's not bad from a small look. Why don't you stop fishing in front? Manbao didn't speak for a while and asked Keek. Keek said, it doesn't work there. There are not many fishes detected, and the host should not be able to catch them. It is recommended to go down another 300 meters or so, there are many there. Manbao felt that 300 meters was not much different from where they were. They could stop there and walk up to 300 meters to go fishing. So when they got there, everyone stopped, and the guards started to carry things down from the car, mats, low tables, then melon and fruit refreshments, and finally the wooden barrels and fishing tackle they needed for fishing. Mr. Zhuang walked around the neighborhood with his hands behind his back. He felt that the guard chose a good place, so he stroked his beard and smiled. Yes, I will call Wei Xinggren and the others together tomorrow. Manbao, call Nai to join the army again. Mr. Zhuang shook his head, forget it, Nai Kenjun probably won't like fishing. Manager Li has inquired about them. There is no bait for sale here. Fishing here is done by digging some bugs by the lake and hanging them on the hooks. Of course, it is not certain whether they can attract fish or not. So Manbao and the others took small bamboo baskets and medicine hose and began to dig for bugs. The three Bai Shan are very experienced in this, and Lu Huan is also very experienced. After turning over the grass, he exclaimed, here, there are two small holes, and there must be earthworms below. The only inexperienced is Yin Or. He has never known about digging bugs since he was a child. He has never seen a few bugs before, so he stepped forward and looked curiously. An earthworm that is still rolling in two halves. He was startled and couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Bai Erlang and Lu Huan were very excited to grab it directly, each grabbed half of it and showed it off. Look, we dug it. Zhou Liru, who was on the side, glanced at it, then dug out 2 earthworms from the ground and held them in the palm of his hand to show them. Bai Erlang and Lu Huan looked jealous. Yin Or, Bai Shan and Manbao have also harvested. The land by the lake is moist and the water and grass are abundant. It seems that few people dig this area, so there are quite a lot of earthworms underground. There are earthworms in 6 or 7 places. Mr. Zhuang looked amused and waved to Yin Or said, come on, I'll teach you how to handle fishing hooks. Yin Or turned around quickly, took a deep breath and stepped forward. After the guards put the things in place, they spread out, searched the neighborhood, and after confirming that there was no danger, they stood around lazily guarding, and did not mean to help their hands dig bugs. Bai Shan and the others did not call them, they dug up a lot by themselves, and then brought them back to Mr. Sir, do you want to add some seasoning? Bai Shan said, I remember adding some seasoning to earthworms, it will taste better, right? Yen Or couldn't help but looked away, looked at the calm and clear lake and asked, have you ever eaten? Everyone raised their heads and glanced at him, tisk, knowing that he had committed the same problem of loving cleanliness again. To say that he loves cleanliness, Bai Shan also loves cleanliness, but playing with mud is not one of them. Bai Shan simply invited Longevity and asked him to help his master cut and hang earthworms. Longevity. There were only 2 bamboo baskets, so Man Bao reached out and folded 2 large leaves over, and poured out a handful of earthworms. After wrapping them, he took the fishing tackle and left, let's go up there to fish. Bai Shan immediately followed, I'm with you. Bai Erlang glanced at the 2 and felt that he couldn't go at this time, otherwise it would be a big lantern, so he stopped Lu Huan, who was eager to try, let's find a place to fish by ourselves. Yin Yu looked around and felt that Mr. Zhuang was the cleanest place, so he didn't go anywhere. Zhou Liru also carried the small bamboo basket and Bai Lu Huan away. She neither wanted to disturb her aunt or uncle, nor did she want to stay by Mr. Zhuang's side. Recently, the articles that Mr. Zhuang asked her to memorize are very difficult. They are much more difficult than the prescriptions that my sister-in-law asked her to memorize. Therefore, she has been avoiding Mr. Zhuang for the past 2 days. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2218. The fish in this lake are not very easy to catch. If you want to catch certain kinds of fish, it will be even more difficult to catch. The hook that Manbao dropped was pulled 4 times, either the movement was slow and nothing happened, or the fish that was pulled up was not what she wants. But it is still a joy to be able to catch fish. Manbao excitedly took off the fish and threw it into the wooden bucket, and even carried it to the water's edge and filled it with a little water to make it livelier. Bai Shan threw the hook up, the earthworms on the hook were gone, but a piece of waterweed was pulled up on it. He paused for a moment, then glanced at the place where he hooked, there was obviously not much water plants there. Bai Shan didn't take it to heart, he added a bait, walked to the side and hooked again, washed his hands, and sat and waited when he came back. Manbao moved the hook to the side of the fish under the order of Keek, and Keek told her, paddled past it, it went away and was eaten by other fish. Before he could say a word, Manbao immediately pulled up the hook, which was quite heavy. A fish struggled in mid-air with its tail flicking. After hitting the grass with a snap, it jumped a few times unwillingly, trying to jump back into the water. With a wow from Manbao, Bai Shan immediately dropped his fishing rod and rushed over to help. Daji sat under the tree and closed his eyes to rest in peace. Daji opened his eyes and took a look, then closed his eyes again, and continued to sleep against the tree. Manbao was pulling the fishing rod, while Bai Shan held the big fish with his hands, took the hook out of its mouth, and then threw it into the wooden barrel. Bai Shan was envious, you have already caught 2. Manbao also felt that he was lucky in fishing this time. Although he didn't catch what he wanted, the fish was very big. Bai Erlang, who was far away from them, heard the movement, moved his butt, but couldn't help but ran over to take a look. He looked at the 2 fish in the bucket, turned around and ran back, wait, I can catch fish in a while. Stand up. Zhou Liru's voice had come from there, your bait was eaten. Bai Erlang ran faster. Bai Shan also went to pull his fishing hook to see the situation. He felt the weight, and when he pulled it excitedly, the look on his face collapsed. Manbao snorted, who threw melon rinds into the lake. Bai Shan pulled up the melon rind expressionlessly and threw it under a tree to make fertilizer for it. After changing a bait, he looked at Manbao. Where do you think I should hook it? After thinking about it for a while, Manbao whispered, come with me, we will attack from front to back. Keek gave them instructions on how to flank their target fish back and forth, but it was useless. The other party didn't seem to be interested in these bait, grass carp and the like. Now Manbao is also depressed, holding the fishing rod very sad. I can't go on like this. Bai Shan sighed. No wonder the fishmonger said that the fish is not easy to come by. It turns out that it is really hard to come by. Manbao, does Uncle Joe only like that kind of fish? Manbao glanced at it and said, he has all these fish. Bai Shan thought hard and thought of some traces. I remember, when we were young, we fished for fish every winter, and you would always pick some small fish from a pile of fish and say that they would be released in the canals of our Zhuangzi. There will be big fish in the canals. Manbao glanced at Daji in the distance and whispered, I did release him. It's just that one will be recorded before it is released. Bai Shan smiled, walked to the lake and looked down. It took a long time to occasionally see a fish passing under the water. Tuesday brother taught us to use a straw-woven fish basket. Although it is not very strong, it should be able to catch fish. Shall we try this method? Manbao also squatted by the lake and looked down, then shook his head after a long while. No, it seems to be a little deep where it haunts, and it doesn't like to go upstream. The fish also have their own water layers that they like to live in, and the fish baskets can't reach them. It's too short. In addition, the town strictly prohibits outsiders from fishing. Although there are only them here, no one will know about it, but it is not good. The best way is to fish, but unfortunately they don't seem to be very interested in bait, so what do they like to eat? Where does Coco know what they like to eat? Although these two kinds of fish have not been recorded, the encyclopedia can find the information, but there is no food they like to eat, just that they are omnivores and can eat food. Earthworms are naturally in their diet. Manbao asked in his heart, maybe we can try other bait, but there are only earthworms here. Keek, open the mall and search for bait. Keek did as she said, and after a while, she searched for a row of bait for her. The price varied and the fish targeted. Manbao lowered his eyes and sank into the system and was dazzled by the selection, so he simply stopped choosing. Keek, choose it. Keek chose a similar one according to the type of fish to be included. I don't know if it is useful or not, it depends on the situation. Manbao placed the order directly, and after waiting for a while, she moved her hand and squeezed two baits when she took it out from her sleeve. She gave one to Bai Shan and hung one on the hook herself. Bai Shan, who was thinking hard, suddenly received such a bait, raised his eyebrows high, looked at Manbao without asking anything, just hung it on the hook and put it down. The two of them quietly glanced at Daji in the distance. They were looking for the best fishing location, and they were getting farther and farther away, but they were not too far away, but this obviously made Daji not very at ease. Look up. Dagil was looking at them when they looked over. Seeing the two little masters look over, he thought they had something to do with them, so he got up to come over, but the two looked back as if frightened, then leaned against each other and bowed their heads, not knowing what they were guilty of. Daji paused for a while, then turned around and sat under the tree. Forget it, he was an adult, so he couldn't follow too closely. After all, his eldest son is not too young, he is a little older than the young master. When he returns from the western regions this time, it is time to find him a daughter-in-law. The money he has saved over the years, plus the money his son earned by playing darts, should be able to buy a small yard in the outer city of the capital. In the first few years, he can help him a little bit. In the future, he should be able to support his family by himself. Although the younger son is not too young, he is a scholar. He can get married later, and save some money for him at that time. Daji was planning in his mind, and at the same time, Manbao and Bai Shan, who felt the fish bite the hook, immediately pulled the hook, and the beautiful silver fish flashed dazzlingly in the sun. Man Bao and Bai Shan were not sure which fish they caught. "It's not the fish he wanted," Keek said happily, "it's it." The fish fell on the grass, and Man Bao immediately ran up to hold it, and then carefully took off the hook. The silver fish was not big, only about the size of 2 palms. He jumped up and directly sprinkled water on their faces. Bai Shan laughed when he saw it. He also put the fish in his hand into the wooden bucket and asked in a low voice, "Is it it?" He thought it was very similar to what he saw in the morning, but the fish actually looked very similar. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2219. Man Bao nodded fiercely. Seeing that there were still drops of water hanging on her face, Bai Shan took out the handkerchief and wiped her face. Man Bao reached out to take it, but Bai Shan avoided it. "Your hands are dirty." Man Bao glanced at his hands, only to realize that after he put down the fish, he washed his hands in the wooden bucket. Although it would not be too clean, it was much cleaner than her hands with mud and grass. Man Bao put his hands in the wooden bucket and rubbed it, but stretched his face towards Bai Shan so that he could rub it better. Bai Shan smiled and wiped the water droplets from her eyebrows. Man Bao closed his eyes subconsciously when the handkerchief touched her eyebrows. I kissed on the eyes, and it was instantly separated, so fast that Man Bao didn't respond, only felt that the eyes were touched by something soft. She opened her eyes and looked at him blankly. Bai Shan was also stunned for a moment, and then his face flushed red. He turned his head to look at Daji behind him with a guilty conscience. Daji immediately retracted his gaze and looked up at the sky. Bai Shan's face turned even redder. He reached out and squeezed Man Bao's hand, and asked in a low voice, "Uncle Joe is here too?" Man Bao's face was also a little red, which made her not know whether she should be here or not. Because her father is indeed not here, but Keek is there. Keek ignored them, let go of the scanning range, and emptied the space. Man Bao noticed it and breathed a sigh of relief, but Bai Shan, who didn't hear her answer, also guessed the answer, and his face turned even redder and a little embarrassed. After all, he kissed his daughter in front of his father. Seeing that he was so embarrassed, Man Bao couldn't help but glance at Daji. Seeing that Daji was still looking at the sky, he quickly kissed him on the face. The soft lips touched his cheeks. Bai Shan's heart skipped a beat, and then quickly jumped up. His hands and feet felt weak for a while. He looked at Man Bao, then looked back at Daji. Daji had already lowered his head to look on the ground, but still turned sideways towards them. Bai Shan held back his smile and asked in a low voice, "Uncle Joe isn't there?" It was only after he said that he realized that his voice was a little hoarse. He cleared his throat uncomfortably, and Man Bao, who was opposite him, nodded with a blushing face. Bai Shan squeezed her fingers, and the two of them played with their fingers in the water in the wooden bucket. The fish inside would pop up from time to time, but Bai Shan skillfully put them on the head and mouth, knocking the fish off. The two of them played for a while, and when their mood finally calmed down, they pulled out from the bucket holding hands. The two of them smelled their hands and felt a little fishy, so they couldn't help but stare at each other and smirk. Man Bao glanced at Daji, saw that he had sat under the tree again, and seemed to be closing his eyes to rest, so he whispered, "Come." He didn't say who was coming, but Bai Shan knew that Uncle Joe was coming, so he honestly let go of Man Bao's hand, stood up and stood beside Man Bao, just enough to block Daji's sight. His back was straight, like the green pines on the cliff, and it seemed that the person who blushed almost dripping blood just now was not him. Man Bao looked up at him and pursed his lips and smiled, then reached out and touched a white bait, which disappeared in the wooden barrel. She hesitated for a while, and Keek said, "Host, the research value of the silverfish is not low, and you can get a lot of points by selling it to other research laboratories in the forum." Man Bao glanced at his shrunk points. Although there were some supplements during this time, it was not much. Even wild antelopes only got 8,600 points. It was obvious that a little bird had gotten a lot of points before. Therefore, during this period of time, I kept digging for flowers and plants, and I only got 50,000 points in total. Some flowers and plants are not worth points, and I can only get more than 20 points. Listen to Keek, this fish earns more points than the antelope. Manbao did not hesitate to include another silverfish. The appetite can often be satisfied, but the points are not often earned. Manbao took out his hand and went to the lake with Bai Shan to wash his hands. Bai Shan washed for a while before asking in a low voice, "Is Uncle Joe still there?" Manbao shook his head. Bai Shan laughed, then moved to Manbao and huddled together to wash his hands. But it took so long to wash hands. The two of them squatted by the lake and played in the water. From time to time, they tugged at the water plants. Above their heads were the shadows cast by the trees by the lake. The sunlight fell through the gaps in the leaves. The sun swayed little by little, and Manbao stretched out his hand to chase, feeling very happy. Bai Shan looked up at her smiling face and couldn't help grinning. Daji felt that they had been staying by the lake for too long, so he couldn't help getting up and walking a few steps here. After thinking about it, he retreated. He went to the other side and called a guard to ask about the situation there, and then he got on. The former said, "Master, Mr. Zhuang has caught several fish. Master Tang and the others want to bake fish. Do you and Miss Man want to go and have a look?" Bai Shan didn't want to go. He turned around and took their hats, then went to hold Manbao's hand, and said to Daji, "There seems to be a melon field over there. Let's go there and take a look at the fish in the wooden barrels and give them back to them, save the big ones and go back to stew, and the rest are as they wish." Daji glanced at the hands they held together, and could only nod in response, but instead of going back by himself, he turned around and handed the barrel to a guard, then followed Bai Shan and Zhou Man from a distance. The townspeople knew that fields could not be too close to the lake, not only because the lake would flood the land at high tide, but also because reclamation too close would damage the lake. The lakeside is almost filled with trees and wild grasses, and there are fields only if you go far away. Nearer fields are irrigated with water drawn from ditches, so wheat is planted, and farther fields are planted with corn and barley. There is very little corn. Manbao and Bai Shan walked by the ridge holding hands. You can see that it is not growing very well, so it should be because the yield is not good, so there are very few people here. The worst place for the highland barley to go down is the melon fields, many of which are melon fields, and some have wooden sticks on the ground. Except for the absence of walls and roofs, it can be seen that this should be a house style before. Someone in the field saw two strangers approaching holding hands. Although they had never seen them before, looking at their clothes, they knew that they were guests who came into the town yesterday. So the melon farmers working in the fields warmly greeted them. Their Chinese is not very good, they can only vaguely shout hello. Bai Shan greeted them in nonsense with a smile, then pointed to the frames and asked, "Is that a house?" The melon farmer danced and explained, "It's a greenhouse. It's very cold in February and March, and the melon seedlings can't survive. In June, customers come to buy melons, so we built a house in February and covered it with thatch, and the melon seedlings survived. The taste of melons grown in such greenhouses is actually not as good as that of normal ones, but they can be harvested a month in advance. At that time, passers-by will pay a high price, which is even more valuable than normal melons." This method was taught to them by a passing guest from the Central Plains. I heard that the people of the Central Plains grow vegetables like this in winter, which is very powerful. See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2220. This is actually not the same as the shed dishes they made. Bai Shan and Man Bao curiously stepped forward to look around, and then looked at the difference between the melon inside and the melon outside. The outer ones are bigger than the inner ones, but most of them are still tender, as you can see. Man Bao asked about the price. The melons in the melon fields are naturally cheaper, and the people who will still work in the melon fields during this time period are not very smart people. They wiped their hands on their clothes, and said a little embarrassedly, "Miss Young Master is looking at the choice, you can choose one for 20 cents. This is much cheaper than the ones sold in small towns, and they can pick them by themselves." Man Bao and Bai Shan got excited and immediately started to turn around in the melon fields, looking for ripe and sweet melons under the guidance of the melon farmers. The melon farmer said proudly, "The melons here are all delicious. The young lady ate the melons from our town yesterday, so you should know." Bai Shan nodded, "It is indeed much sweeter than the ones grown in the capital." The melon farmers became complacent. They say that the water and soil in the capital is good, but this kind of melon is really not as good as ours. Man Bao said, "Because the sunshine here is good." The melon farmer was taken aback and asked, "What's the matter with sunshine?" Bai Shan smiled and said, "You have enough sunshine, and the fruits are sweet. Every place has a gift from God." Man Bao saw a melon not far away, and immediately stepped forward and picked it up to show the melon farmers, "Is this ripe?" The melon farmer immediately put Bai Shan's words behind him, and nodded again and again, "It's ripe, it's ripe, the lady picked it well. Look at this flower skin, it's sweet at first glance." The full treasure was picked. Daji finally caught up, borrowed a basket from the melon farmer, took the melons and put them in, and then carried them behind them and followed them around the melon fields. Although this melon farmer's melon fields are not big, there are quite a few ripe ones, and it can be seen that he has not picked them much, so Man Bao and the others have picked a lot of big and good melons, and they look very sweet. A basket can hold 20 or so melons. Man Bao and Bai Shan can put 23, and the two of them hold one more, so they have picked 25. They had silver horns on them and no copper plates, but it was obvious that the melon farmers had no money to find them, so Bai Shan said, "Do you know where we live? Go to our yard to get money in the evening, and take the basket back by the way." The melon farmer happily responded, and very enthusiastically wanted to carry the basket for Daji, but Daji refused, and he could carry it himself and go. Bai Erlang and the others have already grilled 2 fish. Their craftsmanship is not bad. They also brought salt on purpose, and the taste is not bad no matter how bad it is. And if you bake it yourself, even if it doesn't taste good, it will feel especially delicious. When they saw Bai Shan and Zhou Man coming back, they immediately waved, "Come on, we've left you a piece of fish." Bai Shan held the melon in one hand and Man Bao in the other. He glanced at the half-baked fish, and said with disgust, "I don't want to eat anything too fishy on a hot day." Mr. Zhuang, however, ate half of the fish. At this time, he felt fishy and salty. When he saw the melon in their arms, he beckoned them to bring it. Man Bao gave the melons in his arms and said, "Sir, there are melon fields over there, and we bought 25. Mr. Zhuang smiled and asked, "Why did you buy so many? Melons are cold, didn't you say you can't eat more?" Man Bao smiled and said, "It can be stored for a long time. Let's eat a little today and eat a little more tomorrow. It will be eaten within 2 days." He added, "I heard that it is cold outside at night. When the time comes, put the cold melon in the lake and eat it. It should taste better when you eat it at noon." Mr. Zhuang shook his head and said with a smile, "Just eat a melon, you are quite troublesome." But he didn't object. In fact, it won't take another 2 days, they should be able to eat it tomorrow. Bai Shan kept a few, and then asked Dagil to distribute them among the guards. Bai Shan and the others also restrained 1 or 2 or 3 divided a melon, The guards felt thirsty, but they were able to eat one per person. Everyone ate some snacks, took out the pie made in the morning and ate it hot, and then ate some melon and drank some tea. The sun is very strong and the temperature is rising, but the lake is cool and majestic, and the heat will disappear a lot here. Moreover, they are still in the shade of dense trees. So they had enough to eat and drink, and a few people felt sleepy. Daji asked, "Master, do you want to go back?" Bai Shan shook his head, "I finally came out, but I haven't had enough fun yet." Mr. Zhuang thinks so too. When Daji heard this, he took off the rest of the mats tied to the car and laid them down for them to lie on and rest on. Man Bao took out a small bag from his sleeve pocket, opened it, took out a medicine bag, opened the small incense burner on the side, and poured it in. After a while, a scent mixed with medicinal incense wafted out, occasionally still nearby. The lingering insects flew away alertly, and the nearby insects also fled for their lives. Mr. Zhuang narrowed his eyes slightly when he saw it. "The incense I burned before was also prepared by you, but the effect was not so good." Man Bao said, "There are many worms outside. This is an enhanced version, but it doesn't smell very good." Mr. Zhuang smelled it and thought it was okay, but the smell was not as soft as before. Others also felt good, and this medicinal fragrance seemed to have a calming effect, and they felt even more sleepy when they smelled this medicinal fragrance. Man Bao and Zhou Liru were lying on the side, yawned, squinted at the leaves above, the sunlight that had leaked, and her heart slowly calmed down. She talked to Keek one after another. "That day when you entered the town, you clacked, it seems that there are a lot of things that can be recorded." Keek replied yes and told her, "It's all around here, don't you want to stay for 20 days? There will be a chance to be included." After speaking, he asked Man Bao, "Where are you going tomorrow?" It didn't believe that she would stay in the town all the time. Man Bao said, "It's still here, but I want to walk along the direction of the lake to see where it will flow and how it will disappear into the desert in the end." This idea is really beyond Keek's expectations, and the host seems to always like to explore these foundations. Keek thought for a while, but still didn't tell her the answer directly. She could go if she wanted, just to go out and see what could be included. After Man Bao finished gossiping, he slowly fell asleep. When he woke up, the sun was already slightly westward, and it seemed that it was not right. Mr. Zhuang has changed the hook to another position to fish. He caught a lot of fish, but he is very picky. If it is too small, he will let it go. Grass carp doesn't like it either, so let them go. It's still a guard who can't see it, saying that if the masters don't like it, they can eat it. Only then did Mr. Zhuang leave some fat fish. He didn't throw them all into the lake, and he also left the grass carp behind. He was in a good mood, and said to Man Bao, who woke up and sat on the mat in a daze, "There are quite a lot of fish here. See you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2221. The group returned with a full load, and it really came back with a full load. They couldn't finish the fish they caught, so they distributed it to each yard, and even Master Yu distributed 2 fish. As soon as he returned to the yard, Steward Li led 3 women to meet him. "Master, these are the cooks and helpers I invited, they will stay in the yard to serve in the future, and the young masters and young ladies can call them for anything." Bai Shan was still carrying the barrel in his hand, and when he heard the words, he put down the barrel and rolled up his sleeves. He turned his head and glanced at the 3 of them. The cook is the oldest among the 3. She looks like she is in her 30s. Her head is wrapped in a piece of cloth. Her clothes are white with washing and several patches have been applied. She looks like she is from the Central Plains. A little rough, she was standing with her head lowered slightly, and she felt her eyes fall on her. She couldn't help clenching her hands nervously. Bai Shan asked, "What kind of dishes do you know?" Steward Li stepped aside, not intending to speak for her, but obviously wanted her to answer. The cook couldn't help pinching her fingers nervously, but she gave a fluent gift and replied, "I know how to cook Shu cuisine. I have lived near Jiangyi for a few years, so I also have some Beijing cuisine." Bai Shan raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Director Li. Man Bao, who was allocating fish, heard it and couldn't help but let out a huh. He turned his head to look at Steward Li and said with a smile, "Steward Li specially found it for us." Li Guanqi smiled and said, "Mr. Gan and the young ladies have a bad appetite, so I wondered if the food here is not good, so I went out for a walk today, and happened to see Mrs. He, who spoke with some accent. The little one felt cordial when he heard it, and only when he asked, did he know that she was indeed from Shu, and she could cook again, so the little boy invited her on his own initiative. He said, the masters will stay here for a while, and they can't always eat in inns and restaurants. The dishes here are just the same. Although the dishes of each family will be slightly different, they are still the same." He said with a distressed expression, "This is too wrong for the young master and the young ladies. The young master and Miss Man have lost weight in the past 2 days. I heard that there were fish to eat, so Niken Jun, who was wandering over to pick up the fish, couldn't help but look at Zhou Man and Bai Shan after hearing these words. And do they have a bad appetite? They ate together last night, probably because they hadn't eaten rice for a long time. Both of them ate 2 big bowls of rice last night, as much as he did. No, they also ate fruits and snacks less than half an hour after the meal." Niken Jun twitched the corners of his mouth, looked away, and asked Bai Erlang, "You want to send us fish?" Bai Erlang returned to his senses, pointed at the fish in the wooden barrel generously and said, "You can pick 2 at random." Man Bao suddenly remembered something and asked the cook, "Can you make tofu? I suddenly want to eat tofu fish head." Mr. Zhuang, who had not spoken for a while, suddenly nodded and said, "This is not bad." Sister He's face showed bitterness. She squeezed her fingers and said, "I can make tofu fish head, but I can't make tofu." Man Bao said happily, "If you can't, just buy it. Do you have to be able to grow rice if you can cook?" Man Bao paused for a while, tilted his head and looked at Bai Shan in disbelief. "No way, there's no tofu here." Bai Shan carefully recalled the places he walked yesterday. "It doesn't seem to be there, right?" Sister He said, "No, people here don't even grow beans, so there is no tofu." She said, "Beans are for horses." Man Bao thought for a while, and said with uncertainty, "I think I should." After speaking, she looked at Zhou Liru a little unconfidently. She knew the recipe. When Mrs. Zhou made tofu for the first time, it was Man Bao's advice, but it was her own sister-in-law. She said the last sentence and the other party could understand the next sentence. It's different if you change it to someone else. Zhou Liru scratched his head and said with certainty, "If there is brine, I will order tofu." During the 2 years when the little aunt went to Yazhu, she and her 2 elder sisters helped to make all the tofu at home, not to mention that the second elder sister also went out and the eldest sister got married. But I can't guarantee how it will taste. Because making tofu is also a craft, when her mother didn't study very well, she thought about letting her learn it well, and getting married in the future is also a craft. So she tried to order 2 pots of tofu, and in the end the tofu was done, but in the end she left it all at home to eat, and even gave a lot to her uncle's house. Although everyone didn't say it, Zhou Liru knew that the tofu she ordered was not very good. But, who cares, anyway, I can eat it in the end. Isn't the 2 pots of tofu still eaten up at home in the end? She can do brine. Man Bao turned his head and said to Mr. Zhuang, "Sir, it's too late today. At most, we can only make brine. To eat tofu and fish head will have to be tomorrow at the earliest." Mr. Zhuang didn't pick. "Okay, then tomorrow." Sister He knew that she could stay as soon as she heard it. She breathed a sigh of relief and immediately rolled up her sleeves and went forward to take the bucket, and asked humbly, What do you want to eat at night, Mr. and Miss? After thinking about it, Mr. Zhuang said, eat some vegetarian food and stir-fry some vegetarian dishes. Recently, he has been eating either meat or dry food, and his stomach is a little bit unbearable. The cook should go. Man Bao waved his hand and said, I do whatever I want, I like to eat it, you can make it. By the way, stewed rice, I want to eat rice tonight. Bai Erlang on the side nodded again and again, yes, braised rice. Bai Shan discussed with Director Li, when you arrive in Shazhu, remember to buy some rice noodles. Manager Li complied, and then introduced the other two to them, this is to help in the kitchen and clean the yard. The masters can also give them anything they need to wash. After all, there are Miss Man and Miss Li Ru, it is more convenient to have two maids. The two of them are not too young. They are in their 20s, with high nose and deep eyes. They should be locals. They can speak simple Chinese. It was neat, and Bai Shan decided to leave them behind and let them clean the yard first. They made a mess when they divided the fish. Nai Kenjun stood aside and watched the whole process, stunned, turned his head and asked Man Bao, what is Master Zhou going to do during this time? 20 days is not a short time, you can't sleep all the time, right? Man Bao smiled and said, tomorrow we will go fishing, but I still want to go to the Gobi. Nai Kenjun asked enthusiastically, what are you looking at? Look at the scenery, Man Bao said, I heard that there will be some plants growing in the Gobi, which are not found in the Central Plains. I'll go take a look. The interest on Nai Kenjun's face stopped, and he felt that he was asking in vain. After thinking about it, he asked, don't Master Zhou visit the mayor of the town? Man Bao shook his head, he wasn't appointed by the imperial court, and I didn't come here for business. I'll just be my guest, but if you want to join the army, you can go. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2222. Nai Kenjun pondered. Unlike Zhou Man, he is responsible for the safety of the entire team, and whenever he goes to a place, he will subconsciously investigate the local forces. In some big places, they only need to stay for a day or two, but this time they are going to live here for a long time, and this town is not big, a little natural disaster will affect them, so they still have to understand. Nai Kenjun rubbed his chin and thought for a while, then said, I'm going to visit the mayor. Would you like to join Mr. Zhuang? Mr. Zhuang thought about it seriously, and then said to him, okay, let someone send a post tomorrow morning, we will go fishing, and we will visit around noon. If it is not easy to give a heavy gift, just wrap 2 packets of tea leaves. Man Bao said, 2 more fish. Just before Nai Kenjun was about to nod, Mr. Zhuang patted Man Bao's head with a smile, and scolded, naughty, how can a guest come from afar with ingredients? Not visiting relatives. Nai Kenjun also reacted, glanced at Zhou Man sadly, and said, listen to Mr. Mr. Zhuang called Shangbei Erlang and Lu Huan Zhou Liru and said with a smile, you guys also go to CNC. Lu Huan pointed at Bai Shan and Zhou Menyan or asked, sir, don't they want to know each other? Mr. Zhuang smiled and shook his head, they don't need it. Yin or frail, the family has decided to let his 6th sister establish a household. He's smart, and he's not bad at all. There's no need to care about such trivial things. Bai Shan and Zhou Man have seen ups and downs long ago, and Man Bao has been in the officialdom for several years. These 2 years have not been bad in terms of human relationships, so there is no need to practice here. If it wasn't for Bai Erlang and Lu Huan to study and study, Mr. Zhuang didn't really want to go. As Man Bao said, they were guests, so it would be good to be a guest. But it's not bad to be able to meet the mayor of the town and talk about the customs here. So the candidates to visit were decided. The next day they still went fishing at the lake, but in a different location. Man Bao also wanted to taste that rare fish, and there were 3 kinds of fish in the water that she hadn't recorded before, so she asked Keek to scan the location for her. She basically ran after those fish with a fishing rod. Unfortunately, not all fish love the same kind of bait, so Man Bao bought 4 kinds of bait in a row. After trying all of them, only 2 kinds of fish were included, and the other one could not be caught. According to Keek, they live among the rocks at the bottom of the lake. Even if the fishing hook goes down to the area where they are active, they bite the bait, and the fish can quickly react when Man Bao lifts the rod, and then slips into the rock again. Middle. Many times Man Bao and Bai Shan also hooked the hook on the stone, but in the end there was no way, and the hook they had lifted had to be replaced. It gave up after a few full treasures. It seems that this kind of fish is not suitable for fishing. Bai Shan thought so too. He pondered, is there any other fishing method? Man Bao also pondered, wait for me to go back and look for it. I looked for it with Keek, but I don't know what to do. Since I know that there are species that she hasn't listed below, I won't be able to encounter it next time if I don't include it this time. Whether it's for herself or Keek, it will be included. Keek said that its mission to this world is to collect all the species in this world, and only after reaching a certain point can it go home. She was young at the time and didn't remember much, but she should have needed a lot of points. When he thought of it, he asked, and Man Bao asked Keek directly. Coco paused for a moment and then said, the recorded species can only choose to leave the world and return to the main system when more than 80% of the detected species are reached. What it doesn't say is that there are various strict parallel conditions below. If the points obtained by the recording do not reach a certain number, the main system will judge them to be unqualified, and would rather directly destroy the core chips and let them flow out. No recycling, let alone optimized chips. In addition, there are various performances during the execution of the task, all of which are the content of the assessment. In short, it is very complicated, but the points are indeed the first priority and the most important. On this basis, as long as the operation of the subsystem does not violate the principle, the Alliance will not care about many things. This is also the fundamental reason why it preferred to bind a child in Zhouman before the energy was exhausted, and was not willing to report an error to the main system for recycling. If an error is reported, based on the distance it has fallen into this world, the main system is likely to determine that it is unqualified, directly destroy its chip, and cut off the connection, rather than expending manpower and material resources to recover it. These memories flashed in the Keek chip with a string of data, and then it said nothing, buried the data deeply and focused on the business. Host, I will check all kinds of fishing equipment. Man Bao said, it should be inconspicuous and easy to operate, and it should be cheap. Keek said he understood, and then divided the data to find relevant information. Bai Shan saw that Man Bao had put away the fishing rod, so he also put it away, looked left and right, and saw that they were running far away without realizing it. There was only Daji standing far away besides the two of them, so he turned his head. Asked, shall we go back? Man Bao looked at the time and nodded again and again, go. So the two of them carried the barrel together and turned back. Daji stood aside, and when they came up, he would reach out and take the wooden barrels in their hands. Bai Shan handed the two of them's fishing rods to him. You are carrying this, the fishing hook is broken again, give us another one later. Daji, who had already exchanged 2 hooks for them, silently took it and nodded. Back to the place where they were stationed today, Mr. Zhuang and the others were no longer there. Yin Or was sitting on a stool alone with a fishing rod beside him. He was closing his eyes slightly. Hearing the movement, he slowly opened his eyes, and when he saw the two of them, he reached out and greeted lazily. The two of them stepped forward with wooden barrels and asked, how many fish have you caught? Yin he lifted the fishing rod, moved the empty hook to Changshao, let him put on the bait without even looking at it, and said, I have fed fish 18 times. Changshao on the side complained while putting on the bait, our young master didn't catch a single fish, and all the bait he put was eaten by the fish. Man Bao put down the wooden barrel and showed off, "Look, we caught a lot of fish." Yin Or glanced at it and nodded with a smile, "There are fish to eat at night." Yesterday evening, Man Bao taught Mrs. how to make brine, and then soaked the beans overnight. She had already asked her to grind the beans before going out today, and they just ordered tofu when they got back. She nodded and said, "The tofu soup is delicious." Bai Shan said, "I want to eat bean flowers." Man Bao immediately said, "Let Mrs. make it tomorrow morning. There is brown sugar in the luggage. Let's cook the brown sugar water with bean curd and eat it." Yin He's expression was a little blank, and he asked after a long while, "Shouldn't you put onion and ginger soup?" Bai Shan and Man Bao looked disgusted, "We only like sweet food." See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2223. Yin He didn't argue with them either, and put the hook into the water again. Bai Shan and Man Bao couldn't help but turn their heads to look. There was nothing they could do, the movement was a bit loud. I can see that the water surface that was still quiet is bustling with excitement, and many fish are fluttering in the yin or the hook, so there is no need for driftwood to be so lively, okay. As a result, yin stayed still, and after waiting for a long time, the fish had enough jubilation, the water surface gradually calmed down, and many fish could still be seen swimming under the lake. Yin Or was still talking to the two of them, "Are you going to fish here in a while?" Bai Shan and Man Bao saw that he didn't mean to lift the hook, so they didn't ask much, and shook their heads and said, "We're going to the goba to have a look, are you going?" Yin Or turned his head and glanced at the bright sunshine outside the woods, then shook his head, "Go ahead. It's still a horse riding in such a big sun, and I feel hot when I think about it, so forget it." Yin He lifted the fishing rod slowly, and sure enough, the bait was gone again, so he continued to turn the bait on Chang Xiao. Chang Xiao sighed and took the bait without complaint. In fact, he wanted to tell the young master that he could throw the rest of the bait into the lake to feed the fish, which would save a lot of effort. But what Yin Or wants to enjoy is obviously the process of feeding the fish, not simply the result. The guards were watching the fire beside the mat, and there was a jar hanging from the fire. The guards explained, "Our young master doesn't want to eat snacks and cakes, so he made porridge with sliced fish." Man Bao asked curiously, "Can he catch fish?" The guard said, "Mr. Zhuang stayed before he left." Man Bao had to sigh at the kindness of Mr. The guard's skills were average. They only marinated the fish fillets, and then cooked the porridge until half cooked, and then put the fish. Because they were afraid of the fishy smell, they also put several pieces of dry ginger. Now that the porridge and fish have been boiled for a while, the fragrance wafts out. The guards opened it and took a look. They thought it was edible, so they took out some salt and put some in it. Man Bao looked at it and said, "Isn't it enough?" The guard took some more with a spoon and put it in, then looked at her. Man Bao is also not sure, it should be enough. So the guard stirred, then took out bowls to serve them porridge. After Man Bao took a bite, the fish had already dissipated, and there was no such smooth and tender feeling as the sister-in-law did. Bai Shan and Yin Or did not speak after taking a bite. The taste was indeed average, but it was still edible. So the three of them ate a can of porridge. Bai Shan said, "We are going to the goba." Yin Or lazily, "Don't take a break." Bai Shan glanced at the sky outside and shook his head, "No, we want to go out for a walk." He turned around and said to Yin He, "I'll leave it to you here. We may not go back here in the afternoon, but go directly to the town." Yin Or nodded carelessly, "I'll go back by myself when I've had enough." Man Bao put on a hat and left the lake with Bai Shan. This time Daji didn't follow them by himself. He also brought 2 other guards, and the remaining guards were left to protect Yin Or. The 2 ran for about half an hour before arriving at the Gobi, which was very close. In the middle of the journey, Man Bao stopped his horse for a while and went to dig up 2 kinds of plants with a medicine hoe. When they got to the Gobi, Keek rang a ding-ding, and after the sound finished, he said, "Sing again, lest the host forget." Man Bao didn't listen to it much, and only looked at the things on the Gobi with a wow. There is a tree that is taller than her, but it is covered with thorns, but its body is green. Man Bao is amazed, "I have never seen it before." Bai Shan had never seen it before, but he didn't dare to get too close. He felt that being stabbed by the thorns on it would hurt a lot. The 2 dismounted, handed Chi-Ji and Thief Li to the guards, looked closer, carefully reached out and touched them, and then looked at the shiny thorns on them and said, "If you get stuck, it will definitely hurt." Man Bao had already learned about this plant from Keek, and said, "Not only will it hurt, but it may also die." Bai Shan tilted his head, "Death. The wound worsens and it will die." Man Bao took 2 steps back, looked down at its surroundings, and became sad, "It's too big, it's hard to dig." Daji on the side was frightened, "Miss Man, do you want to dig this? It's not difficult to dig, but how to bring it back?" Keek, "Just cut a piece. This thing is easy to live. In fact, there are cultivated species in our world, but now its genes are very old, so it has to be included." Man Bao just coughed lightly and said to Daji, "Just take a look at everything and see the situation. Let's take a look around. You don't have to follow closely." Daji didn't leave. He felt that this place was no better than the lake, not far from the desert, and there were many unseen insects under the Gobi, especially scorpions. Who knows if they will encounter poisonous ones? Man Bao's attitude is not tough. He took out his short dagger, and after looking at it, he didn't want to. It was mainly used to cut things and eat. Now that she has cut these messy things, she feels that next time she is reluctant to use it to cut meat. "So I borrowed a knife from a guard." She took the knife and circled around it, and then carefully cut it twice with the knife, but it didn't fall off. Man Bao wrapped his hand in sackcloth and lifted it carefully before cutting it with the knife. For the final connection, put it in the medicine basket, and then stand on tiptoe to see the condition of the cut surface. Bai Shan looked at it and said, "It's moist, so if you're extremely thirsty in the desert, can you eat this thing?" Man Bao was not sure, so he asked Keek, who looked for information in the encyclopedia, and said, "According to the data, the existing cactus is edible. It has high potassium, high calcium, low sodium, no oxalic acid, sugar, flavonoids, polysaccharides, and other substances. The nutrients contained are not only higher than common plants and fruits, but also higher than some meat, eggs and fish, which are very healthy foods." Man Bao said, But the cacti that have been scanned are all primitive species. Some of them contain toxic flavonoids, and some contain harmful ingredients such as mescaline and ancholine, which have hallucinogenic and anesthetic effects on human nerves." Man Bao's eyes lit up. "Is there anesthesia?" Her eyes were fixed on these long thorns, and she reached out and touched it lightly, and said regretfully, "It's a pity that there is no usage and dosage. Is this thing easy to keep? Can it be saved for future research?" Keek said, "It still needs research in the research laboratory. After waiting for the entries to appear, you should find something. But it also depends on luck. Some research laboratories will put this aspect on the entry. If the research laboratory does not research this aspect, there is no way." Man Bao said in his heart, "Then I will give some to teacher Mo and Drd, maybe they will be interested." And since even the toxins contained are different, obviously many cactus species that look almost the same are different. That's another kind of thing, right? Will it be differentiated when recording? Keek replied happily, yes. See you tomorrow. Ask for a monthly pass. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2224. So Manbao took a knife and chopped around, cutting off 2 or 3 pieces from every cactus he saw. Decided to include 1 piece for the encyclopedia, 1 for Mr. Mo or DRD, and the rest for hanging on the forum. Bai Shan followed enthusiastically, mentioning what to cut from time to time, or showing her where to cut from time to time. Daji followed behind with a medicine basket. Seeing that they didn't care about meat and vegetables, they even cut a piece of a round thorn that was only the height of the foot. They clearly cut 3 pieces from the same big round thorn next to them. Manbao's reason is very good, don't look at them look alike, but it is very likely that they are not from the same family. And even if they are from the same family, there will be some differences between the grown-up and the young ones. Look at the wheat and rice we plant. Do you have to choose the best batch of seeds from the same field? Obviously they belong to the same family, but some grow well, some grow poorly, and the descendants left are also different. This is different. Daji didn't understand very well, but Miss Man, what's the use of these things? Manbao said with a deep face, there are no useless things in this world. I suspect that these things are poisonous. Daji's pupils shrank, and he almost threw the medicine basket out of his hand. Manbao reassured him, it's okay, you didn't eat it, and you didn't get stabbed by it. What are you afraid of? Daji breathed a sigh of relief and asked, since it's poisonous, what should we study this for? Manbao said, it depends on how to use it. Although it is poisonous, it has other uses. I want to try it to see if there is analgesic and anesthesia in it. When Daji looked at these things again, his eyes were different. Manbao finally chopped off a basket. Originally, they wanted to go to the gobe farther to take a look, but the medicine basket was full, so they could only go back to the inn in regret. Although wearing a hood and covering their necks, hands and feet, several people were still sunburned, and when they returned to the inn, they were all red. Yin or hasn't come back yet, obviously he will spend the hottest time by the lake and come back when the sun is not so violent. There were only the guards, the cook, and 2 helpers left in the yard. When they saw them coming back, they immediately stepped forward to lead the horses and those who carried things. When the cook saw a basket of green thorns, she couldn't help but be surprised. These. Manbao said to Daji, send it to me in the attic, and I'll deal with it later. Good luck. Sister, he didn't ask. The 2 helpers on the side didn't speak very well, so they stood by and didn't speak. Manbao asked them in nonsense, do you know the cactus on the gobe? They blinked, turned their heads and glanced at what Dajitai had taken away, and gestured with Manbao, those are round thorns and flat thorns. They are poisonous, but some are edible. Manbao's eyes lit up and asked, can you tell which ones can be eaten and which ones can't be eaten? With a nod, he said, you can eat the tender ones, but not the old ones. Another objected, no, the tender ones are also poisonous, the ones that are very yellow on the top cannot be eaten, and the ones that are not very yellow can be eaten. The 2 couldn't help arguing. Manbao was stunned for a moment, thinking that what they said was too abstract, and it was so confusing, could it really be wrong? The 2 helpers said that of course they will eat wrong, but they said, it doesn't matter if you eat wrong, just see the devil and immortals, and you will be fine when you wake up. He who has no sin will wake up, and he who is very sinful will die. Manbao and Bai Shan. The 2 were silent for a long time, and it took a long time for them to find their own voice and let them go down to rest. Sister, he boiled water for them and asked hesitantly, Miss, do you want to make tea with your concubine? No, we don't drink tea. Manbao decided to drink plain water. Bai Shan took the teapot and said, I'll make it. He turned his head and said to Manbao, it's too hot, Let's drink some tea. I know that Mr. has a bag of black tea in his collection. It's not bitter, and the tea has a strong aroma. Let's drink some. Do you know where? I know, the cage is still in my room, you wait. So the two went upstairs, and Manbao didn't remember until halfway through. He probed and said to them, cut a plate of melons and come up. Sister, he smiled and responded. Bai Shan made tea, while Manbao went to the attic with the fruit plate brought up. The inside is empty, and the original intention is to put valuables for the guests who live here, because to go to the attic, you have to go through all the room doors. But at the moment, it was empty and there was nothing. In the middle was the medicine basket and chopping board that Daji brought up, and he also brought up 2 short knives according to Manbao's request. Bai Shan put the brewed tea on the wooden board, bent over and walked over to open the window, then sat cross-legged on the wooden board and looked at Manbao, how to deal with so much. Manbao rolled up his sleeves and said, let me ask. Bai Shan sat upright. Manbao asked Keek in his heart, how old is it to be included? Keek seemed to understand something and said, half the size of a fist. If it is a cactus in our world, it only takes a small piece to cut it, but the original species may have accidents, so the requirements will be larger. Manbao was happy, so he wrapped his hands in sackcloth, thanks for the big chunks we cut. She took out a piece and said to Bai Shan, you can cut it into half as big as a fist. Bai Shan nodded. Manbao Kong made a gesture with the round thorn he took out, and then cut a piece, trying to make the cut as small as possible. She took a look at it in her hand, and felt that it was green and tender, and it should be considered vigorous, so she silently recorded it. Bai Shan saw the object disappear in her palm, and his back straightened. He placed the cut piece respectfully in the middle, and stared at it with wide eyes. Manbao glanced at him and asked Keek, is this the same? Keek, it's different. Then record it. Anyway, in her eyes, they all look the same, but some obviously different ones are the same kind, which makes Manbao curious. In Keek's words, they grow crooked, but most of the genes have not changed, and the species are the same, but you can include one copy as a reference, but the second one is a differentiated collection, and the reward points will not be too much. Many. Manbao said he understood. Bai Shan and Manbao made a lot of cuts together. For the same, put aside the ones that do not need to be recorded repeatedly, and record the ones that can be recorded, and then cut out 2 pieces along the way, one is placed directly on the forum, and the other is placed in the space. She decided to get in touch with Mr. Modrd at night, and if they were interested, send them some. Of course, these Bai Shan don't know, he only knows that they cut out and put them in the middle, and then they will disappear. There are some things that don't need to be cut, and Manbao said that they are repeated, and they have been collected before. When they had sorted out all the things in the medicine basket, the ones that were supposed to be given to Uncle Joe were finished. They turned their heads and saw that they still had a lot of things left. See you at 6 p.m.